We have collected, maybe, possibly, probably, the most illustrious band of voices Web3 gaming has ever seen on a single podcast at the same time. 3 of the most renowned games and a mythical content creator are joining us for a roundtable conversation about what the heck Web3 gaming is, why it's the future, and what 2024 holds for this space. Your guests today are Don Norbury, the head of studio for Shrapnel, Katie Drake-Bettner, co-founder and co-CEO of Wildcard, Koji Nagata, head of game design for Parallel Studios, and the mythical Games GG content creator of the year, Sam Steffanina. We've never had this many guests on the podcast in one single conversation. So we get into it. It's a little crazy and it is totally awesome. If you are not paying attention to these 4 and the things that they're building, you're about to find out why you're missing out. Tune in. Welcome to 100x Gaming. We've got the biggest group that we have ever had on the podcast at one time. It's probably chaos, but we're going to have a blast. We've got representation from Shrapnel, from Sam and Gamified, from Wildcard, and from Parallel. Every time we have asked, who should we talk to in Web3 gaming? Who's making the most fun names? Sorry, the most fun games. These names pop up over and over and over again. So we are stoked to get to just pick your brains, hang out, sit down. And I would love to kick things off with a simple question. Sam, I see you post this all the time, that Web3 gaming is inevitable. And I am curious, you guys who are building games or talking about games all day long, why the heck is Web3 gaming inevitable? Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100x. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Imagine if Xbox existed without Xbox Live. No way for gamers to play games, no path for developers to find players. That is Web3 gaming right now. Disjointed, messy, fragmented. Shrapnel has the solution. Built on an AVAX subnet by Mark McCurry, head of blockchain and senior vice president at Consensus, with more than 20 years at Microsoft. This infrastructure, codenamed Bridge, is an all-in-one modular multi-chain solution to make Web3 accessible for Web2 devs. What the heck does that mean? It means real games can actually exist in Web3. No more dreaming. Real blockchain gaming is possible because of Shrapnel's codename Bridge. Find out more about Shrapnel and Bridge in the description below. Astrobit is the king of automated trading, and now they've introduced a freemium model. Put those trading fees to use. How does it work? Sign up to an exchange with one of Astrobit's affiliate links and receive at least 30 free credits as a loyalty bonus. Then earn credits on your trading fees. The more you trade, the more credits you can generate. Use those credits towards trading bots and strategies. In other words, you can create a passive income stream at no cost. Find more deets in the description below. Your data is one of the most important things about you, yet you don't control it. Giant corporations do, but you can change that with Storage Chain. Imagine Dropbox, iCloud, or whatever else you use, but it's completely decentralized, encrypted, and built on chain. That means you own everything, and it's not stored on some giant server prone to hacks. Safer, cheaper, better. Even cooler, anyone can contribute storage to the network and earn passive income through their blockchain. As tech advances, the cloud too must evolve. Be a pioneer in the new era of decentralized storage. Visit storagechain.io and receive 150 gigs of free storage to start participating in the Web3 revolution today.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question by deferring to the other smart people on this panel, but that's what I do. I outsource my opinions as a host. I don't have the time or the development background to be able to say, here intrinsically is why I know that this thing is true. But I can say, if people like Katie Drake-Bettner and her husband Paul and Koji and Don are here dedicating their lives to this new technology, I know that there's something there. And I've asked this question a few different times to a few different panels. Is this something we could put back in the box, so to speak? Like, is there a world in which we just go, it was cool, we tried blockchain in gaming, and you know what, guys, it didn't work. We're going to move on. And everybody just forgot about it. And intrinsically, everybody says there's no way. Like, at some point, it'll get efficient enough, scalable enough, whatever, and we will find at least certain use cases that have intrinsic quality of life improvements that are undeniable that people will demand in the future. And so I do think it's inevitable. We can debate on how inevitable, in what ways, etc. But from where I'm sitting, that's some of the reasoning that I put behind it.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. Well, I would love to defer some of the geniuses in the room, as Sam calls you. What about Web3 gaming actually feels like, yeah, Pandora's box is open. There's no escaping. We're here. Gaming has to go in this direction. I think we ask that question all the time of like, what does the evolution of gaming look like? And obviously, we all believe that's blockchain in some capacity. I think we're all probably doing it differently or have different ideas of what that looks like. But I'm curious why inevitable. Anyone can jump in.
Well, first of all, I refuse to be acknowledged as a genius, but I think that the reason why it's inevitable is exactly what you said, right? Like we're all doing it in a different way, but we're all doing it, and it at the end of the day, it just highlights that it's a piece of tech that allows you to do something that you weren't able to do before, and then suggesting like, oh, well, why is it inevitable? It's because it opens doors, and once a door is open, especially in tech, it's very hard to close. And so maybe none of us at the end of the day will get it perfectly right and build the Web3 game, but we'll probably open some doors for somebody to figure out, okay, this is like the perfect way to use Web3 in gaming, and I make this comparison all the time, but and so forgive me if you've heard it before, but inevitably almost every game or almost every piece of software even uses some form of database, right? But we don't call them database games, and they all use them in different ways, but they all leverage that piece of tech to be like, okay, well, here's how it's going to make this game faster, more, we can hold more items or whatever it is. It's just like, we're going to use this tech to enable this game to do something that other games before weren't able to do. And Web3 is going to do that exact same thing. How it's going to do it, we all tout the ideas of ownership or whatever from a Web3 perspective, but maybe it's just because we're too early or like so close to it or whatever that like we don't actually know what Web3 is going to do, but it's going to do something, because again, we've figured out that there's like a something on the other side, and now we just got to figure out how to use it.
Cool. Yeah. Well said. I dig that. Katie, you're not. Do you have any thoughts being someone that is building ecosystems and not just?
So I think that Koji is absolutely correct, and I like the kind of you can tell somebody has actually been in this industry for a while when they have enough humility to know it may not be us, we may be too early, right? Because I think that probably every single person that has developed games long enough has had ideas or specific use cases of tech that were too early, meaning like there wasn't the kind of drive for it. For us, when we did VR, we realized pretty quickly that the hardware wasn't going to catch up enough to have that be a mass market appeal in the short enough amount of time for us to be able to do what we initially set out to do with it, right? And I think that there's not a question about whether or not it's inevitable. It's just very much like Koji said. It's a new technology that unlocks new doors, that gives us opportunities to do things and connect people in ways that we weren't able to do before. And, I think the reticence on the side of a lot of, game devs has been about this idea of ownership or of interoperability from the perspective of, I have a sword in this game, I can take it into this other game over here. And most of the devs were like, that's not how that works. Like it's not the same. But I think once you're in there and you're actually shipping things and you're figuring things out, which it's been really interesting to come in and, Mark Long was our first kind of person that we talked to about even going into this industry. So our connections to Shrapnel have been from the very beginning, but talking to him and him kind of talking us through what the use case that he saw when he first came into this was the first time that we went, oh, okay, what everybody's talking about is this kind of overarching metaverse idea that is Ready Player One and even though we can all look at that and go, yeah, devs have been doing and trying to do that for 30 years. And if they couldn't do it, good luck. What we're now seeing is that interoperability is something very different. And when you look at what Parallel has done with their avatars, with their AI stuff, with the different tournament apps that they're working on, they are participating in interoperability. It's interoperability within a specific ecosystem, right? And that's similarly what I look at as the real opportunity. And that is, if we're creating high quality assets, if we're creating high quality interactions, how do we use those to allow people to connect with each other and affiliate not only amongst the other players, but also with a project or with a team in a way that's beneficial to the entire ecosystem and builds things up? What we see a lot of times in our esports, spaces is that it becomes non-sustainable because they cannot spend enough money on all of the different things in order to keep people working forward. If you're willing to kind of share a little bit of that upside, give people skin in the game, allow them to participate and bring their time, their sweat, their eyeballs, and then let them build in a way on top of your game, then you're creating a funnel that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I think that for us, what blockchain enables is the ability to create those connections and allow other people to do it and not feel like we have to own everything ourselves. So, of course, that is beneficial to us because we're spending less for that initial kind of top of the funnel. But it's also beneficial because if something happens, if we don't get a certain publishing deal signed, everything doesn't just disappear. And so there are people that are actually building on this and have some kind of ownership in the process and in the ecosystem. And it's not just asset ownership, it's ownership within these relationships. And that's the thing that we're seeing happen in gaming, Discord, these relationships. It's all about connection. So everybody here is trying to develop a different way of connecting people through blockchain. And it's going to be so interesting to see where we go from here and how those things ultimately feed off of each other. And we all learn, because that's the thing about this industry and this part of the little industry. There's not a lot of I'm not going to share my upsides or my ideas with you. We have very candid conversations with Sasha. We have very candid conversations with Calvin. We have very candid conversations with Mark. And that doesn't necessarily happen in high level gaming.
Yeah.
You don't see Sony and Microsoft having a dinner where they're actually talking about the things that they're dealing with. I mean, they have a dinner.
It's not a pleasant one that you want to sit in.
They don't talk about that. It's they don't talk about those things. But it is, I think that having a chance to explore this with other people and being open and honest with those people about what is happening is the real benefit of building in a new space every time.
Do you think I really like that? Go ahead, Don.
Do you think it's a product of something intrinsic to it or the phase that we're at?
I think part of it's the phase, and I think there are crazy people like us who like being in that phase. I mean, you can look at the founders of every single one of these projects and the top people that came on board those projects at the very beginning, and we're crazy. We could just do the same thing that we did before that we had massive success. Every single one of us had some kind of massive success. And if we wanted to just go do that again, that would be fine. But we have a problem. And that problem is we want to go play on that very edge, and we want to do things that are kind of high risk, and we want to try new things. And I think we all feel that kinship to each other because we're willing to do that. We're willing to take those risks, and we prioritize our ability to take those risks over some kind of stability that other people need more than we do.
I have a question here to build on top of everything that was sort of just said. I feel like even though we're a lot further than we were 2 years ago before we started really talking about gaming, and now why we're actually having these conversations on the show is because we feel like there's something tangible. We're almost there. We're seeing these games actually have published states, and we're actually going to be able to play them, and everyone's going to get excited. But we're still so early. We don't know what Web3 gaming or just gaming in general will look like in 10 years. I feel like you guys are really the pioneers building the building blocks that everyone else to come will build on top of. But with that idea in mind is, one of the things that Katie said is like you guys are able to just try everything and anything because there's no blueprint. There's no blueprint for anyone to follow yet. And Web2 gaming, that's all there is. There's a blueprint. You copy the top 10 games and then you build a spinoff. And that's what it has become. Right now we have something beautiful that we're able to just explore and create anything, break things and try things because there's no blueprint. Do you guys feel like in 5-10 years, or as this sort of ecosystem continues to evolve, there will be a blueprint where, hey, it's not Web3 gaming anymore, but now it's like games with Web3 blockchain becoming like a database component to it? Do you think that will be the place, or do you feel like we're just going to continue exploring for the time to come?
I mean, it is a very technical thing, right? Blockchain. And, Katie's been talking a lot about what I would consider the interesting decentralized expressions, aside from just, like I come from tech leadership, so I'm always like first principles. It's the TCP/IP, what it is to the internet. It's basically that to distributed ledger and transactions and ownership and all that. But nobody gives a shit about that, right? Like what they care about are the interesting expressions around it. And I think the last paradigm shift that I would, put my finger on the pulse would be the free to play shift that happened very quickly. But in that case, it happened quickly because it was just a business model. Like all the technology was already there. We added kind of the war room process and threw the like gas approach to it and had like a different way of measuring how people went through the funnel and everything. But it's like all the pieces were kind of there. We just had to take a different business approach to it. Whereas in this, it's like, no, this is not just nascent technology, but wildly complex. In engineering terms, like doing concurrency engineering is very difficult. Doing decentralized engineering it's like 10 times more difficult, right? And the stakes are forever, unless if you're doing it wrong. So I think I don't think you're going to see one template shake out of it. I think it's very much going to be like the PlayFab approach of there's so many good analogies on this call already that I hadn't heard. Like the thought exercise of putting the toothpaste back in the tube, and like it actually never occurred to me for some reason. I think just because for me it's a foregone conclusion. And also the database analogy of like it's not a database game; it's a game that uses a backend that everything uses, right? So I think not every game is going to require blockchain technology the same way most games don't require some sort of like backend, the like indie games, like some story driven games. And granted, when you get to the AAA level, they're utilizing achievements and stuff like that. They're on live platforms that we just take for granted after Xbox Live did that for Halo 2, right? But like those sorts of things, maybe those you'll start to see the patterns emerge where people are like everyone's using blockchain, but in that little kind of like not low bar, but more social kind of peacocking, easy to approach way, as opposed to what, at least for Shrapnel, what we're exploring, which is probably an overly complicated way of approaching it, which is fine, right? Like some stuff's going to work, some stuff's going to not work. We've been very candid that it is a grand experiment right from the beginning. And we're taking even a rollout approach of like, we're going to add pieces to it and see what works and what doesn't, so it doesn't all fall over. But I think you're going to see a smorgasbord of patterns start to emerge that then develop into kind of platforms that offer in the same way as a PlayFab or a Live or live services, this like offering for developers to just think about things in a way they hadn't before, or things they can do. And that, of course, includes things like interoperability, initially probably under publishing portfolios, and then, wider adoption, because like you said, it's like engineers look at it like, why the hell would I do that? That's really hard making your stuff work in my game. But like at a blockchain level, it doesn't have to be that. It's just like we're just recognizing that there's transaction and ownership. Like you get to decide how that works, right? So it's the could you do that without blockchain? Maybe. Would you? Absolutely not. Like the companies wouldn't. You can see the proof, which is IPs have to get like a decade mature before they even consider crossovers like that, right? We're going to insert the Master Chief in this other thing, right? Like it's such a just policy business wall that you have to get through, and it's a zero-sum game from a Web 2 perspective. So it's like this is kind of the building blocks and the patterns that are emerging right now. And I agree with like what you're saying, Katie. It's like we're kind of insane, and everybody's trying to figure out their own version of it right now, their own interpretation of it. But I mean, that's my take on the like patterns that I think we'll see emerging over the next 5 to 10 years, really.
I think this is a lot of fun. I've never heard anybody address, I mean, both of you guys were just hitting on that, almost like interoperability as like relational instead of just tech based. I like have not heard that a single time. We've had lots of non-gaming interop people on here. I mean, we've talked to Near and we've talked to Polyhedric, like the guys that are building the interop stuff. But this idea of like, hey, interoperability can be human beings intersecting.
I mean, like the affordances of stuff are the only thing people care about, right? Like we have one of our studio pillars is we're not the metaverse, we're part of it. Which really, like, as time has gone on, I've been like, probably should have used the word multiverse or something in that. It's a little more indicative. It's not like the Neil Stephenson metaverse, which is really just kind of all in one bundle. But like that approach, even to the platform that we're building that powers Shrapnel, is like, yeah, we can represent variants of assets that exist that like any other game can say, like, that's our variant version of that asset on chain. But they get to define like what that data structure looks like. We're just giving the building blocks to recognize that there are variants that other games use, and that is represented in that piece of ownership that exists on chain.
I mean, I was just going to say, because we talk a lot about crypto and blockchain as like ownership tool, but who knows what it'll actually be used for in the end? You know, like people saw NFTs and they were like, okay, art, you know, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be art for sure, you know, and then us insane people come along and we're like, no. Let's do something else more interesting with this, right? But for the longest time, it was just like, no, we're gonna use this for provenance and art and whatever. And so like it may be that a bunch of us are like, you know, I'll speak for Parallel. It's just like, okay, well, you can use it to own your cards. Like that's the lowest hanging fruit there is. But like also those people are used to that stuff. But who knows? Maybe it'll be something completely divorced from ownership, and maybe the transparency element of it will make the gaming stuff more interesting. Or maybe there's another element of it, like the sort of group governance will make the gaming bit more interesting, or who knows, you know? And so like I think that we still don't know how it's all going to shake out yet. So it's impossible to say like this is going to be the mold for the future.
Dude, it's so funny. Consistently across the board, it's exactly what Katie said. The people that are the smartest always admit that they don't know what the hell is actually going to be the answer. It's an amazing quality.
I think humility follows the true geniuses. And I mean, I've said that a lot, even before we were in the gaming space, that like I would way rather talk to somebody who is humble about what they're building than somebody who's like, I have the best thing in the whole world. Because pretty much everyone who told me they had the best game, the game's not really around anymore. A lot of people were saying that in 2021 and the games are dead. I would rather talk to people that are humble and just building cool things. Well said, Sam.
I was going to say, I'd just love to see Koji in a pitch meeting to VCs being like, yeah, I need $100 million, but I don't know what the fuck I'm building, and it's probably going to break.
I mean, you can do that. If you've had success, if you've had enough success in something, you know, you can do that. I mean, when you walk into a negotiation saying, and I think a smart investor is going to appreciate that because they want you to be honest with them. They can't help you if you're not honest with them. And I think saying like, we're going to be experimenting, but X, Y, and Z is what we're going to end up with. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's almost like agile development. You know, if you're experiencing agile development, you're setting the goals and you're saying, I want to get to this by this date, but you're not telling the team exactly how to get you there. You are giving kind of some guidance, and then you're letting them move towards delivering that thing. And it allows for a lot of autonomy, and it makes it possible for people within this space. And in, like, you know, Don said, being from tech leadership, it makes it possible for these like mini teams to exist within the broader structure so that you can be iterating on the fly. And I think that's why we see things like, you know, I mean, you say like Web3 gaming is inevitable, but I mean, you right now have Koji and Don who have the two games, have their own token, have multiple different kind of ways for that token to be utilized within their ecosystem. And they're also continuing to ship product. That, to me, it's not a matter of whether or not Web3 gaming is happening. It's a matter of, when or how does that ramp up to a place where everybody says, oh, it's inevitable now, because people never, you can build 3 or 4 things. And then the one thing you build, they're like, it came out of nowhere. Well, no, it really didn't. Like Pal World didn't come out of nowhere. They had 3 different things that all were building on top of each other.
And they built it for 4 years. It wasn't made overnight.
Yeah. I mean, we want to think that these are overnight successes because it makes it seem like it's just kind of happens out of nowhere. But every single person that is making a game at this level is running at it from 18 different spaces. And part of what they have to do is know how to take an opportunity when an opportunity is dropped in front of them. And I'll tell you that the primary thing that I've seen across the board with the different founders is they see an opportunity and they don't hesitate. That's the thing that makes a big difference in execution is, am I going to take advantage of this opportunity now, or am I going to hem and haw about it? It's scary to be on the ride with the people that are going to take it right now, because especially with crypto, we don't even know what's legal half the time, right? I mean, you're taking a risk. That's not true. Because you're not trying to be upfront and you're not trying to do the right thing, but because nobody will make a decision.
Yep.
And so you have to just kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to take that risk and hope that your intention is what people judge that on, right? And we've been told multiple times, don't launch this, don't launch that. People will hate you because you're tying into this piece. But when it comes down to it, are we launching a primitive that is going to allow us to make a more fun experience, or a more an ecosystem that is more fun to experience? And is that moving us forward on our goal? Are we launching it just to extract value? If we're not launching it just to extract value, but we actually see a use case for it that will make Wildcard better, then we need to go forward with it and say, we're willing to stand on what we're trying to build here. And we're willing to say, this is what's right for the game.
That being said, I would love to extract some value, please.
Yeah. I mean, I sat in a room with Gabe Layden one day, and he goes, look, I just think that half of these developers don't want to make any money. Like, they actually don't want to make money. And I was like, who is this guy? And then I realized who he was. And I was like, oh, that track. You're cool.
I mean, he definitely knows how to make money. There's no question there. Gabe is a mad genius.
I know.
I have a quick build-up question to that. So one of the things that I really do admire about anyone building in the Web3 space, especially with gaming, is that you're not only battling the idea of can we make a game that's fun and different than what's already out there, but you're also building in a space that doesn't have all the puzzle pieces in order for you to build on top of. You guys are not only building the game, but also building the infrastructure that isn't there yet. Do you guys feel like Web3 gaming will actually potentially, and it might be already doing it, but bring solutions to other parts of crypto that aren't fixed yet? Like interoperability is something that everyone is fighting right now. What pieces do you guys think that Web3 gaming is hey, we're building those pieces for not only ourselves, but for everyone in the space?
Yeah. I mean, we're actually building that for everyone in the space. Like, we have a platform called Mercury that we'll be announcing and talking about a lot in the near future.
And we're running an ad on this episode about it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Mercury Play is the game part. And granted, it's like we have the competitive advantage, the kind of moat, if you will, in the typical vernacular of having built the project internally and the platform at the same time, which I think gives us unique insight and opportunity. And early on in the project, it was a lot of shapes that it was taking. But then we got hired this guy, Mark Mercuri, who was the head of blockchain for Microsoft for a long time, and then SVP at Consensus for Infura. And so he knows his shit, right? And all of our kind of approach to it, he's like, no. Like, we're building like a platform to make this work. And he had, worked on all these with these other like CXOs from different industries, Starbucks, like, different like manufacturing pipelines, supply chains. So his approach is very much that. So even though we have like Mercury Play, which has, the ways that it interacts with traditional game services, and the, I'll call it, I guess the polite version is the rapid iteration chaos of a game team. The rude version would be like, don't know what the hell we want to do until we touch it a whole bunch of times and then throw it away and then touch it again. So it's like there's different styles of development, different industries, but ultimately throughout that process, we built like what we call Mercury Core, which are these patterns that live underneath it that help like all of these other things that like everyone's going to need in terms of the messaging layers and the availability, like and notifications and like how it applies to different other industries. So yeah, I think 100%. Like it's the same way, you know, if you go back 10 years, game devs were getting hoovered up by high frequency trading companies because they shared this like, oh, you have, you know, latency tolerance and, you know, it has to run efficiently and like milliseconds matter a lot, which is not typical in most engineering, especially like web style of engineering. So it's like in that same vein, I think our demand for performance and reducing frictional components and everything will just translate, as well as kind of the modules that we're building for the platform will translate into all the other industries that want to use it.
I have to agree. I think one of the things that surprised me about this is I see all these different groups that build platforms. And my theory, and Paul shares this theory as well, is that there are graveyards full of platforms. Like everybody tries to build a platform. You cannot actually vet and figure out a platform at scale without the first killer app. And one of the things that you will see all three of our games have in common is that we started the push before and towards these games with the idea that, yeah, we are building a game and it has to be fun and it has to be something people would spend money to play, not just to make money, not just to whatever, but they would actually spend money to play because it's fun. And we're also utilizing that in order to build some kind of infrastructure that we think is life-changing and world-changing to a certain extent. Now, again, you know, that's going to take completely different forms and it's going to answer different questions based on the goal of the specific game. But we have a philosophy that you can't actually develop a platform to the extent that it's going to be able to be used by a lot of people unless you're developing it with a group that is your key first partner for using that specific technology. And so, you know, you can go build a platform that is going to be in the wreckage in the graveyard of platforms, or you can build a really good game and build the platform around it and then allow that platform to be of service to other things at the same time. It's about which thing comes first. And we talked about building a platform first, and we just don't think that that works. We think that unless you can't have your Steam unless you have the first big game on it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I rant about this on Sam's show all the time, that everyone's like, oh, we're going to be the Steam of Web3. And it's like, no, you need the half-life of Web3 first. Then maybe you can have the Steam of Web3. But yeah, I mean, I think as we as developers and innovators and whatever else make tools to make our lives easier in this space, those tools are just going to become useful for everyone else around you. You know, and I know that I'm going to shamelessly somewhat plug something very quickly, that we are dabbling in the world of AI and the intersection of that and crypto. And we are building a tool, or proposing to build a tool, that is going to help with both of those things. More information to come. I think that we need to dot some I's and cross some T's. I hope I said that right. I usually get those reversed. Before we
cross some I's, dot some
out
T's.
there into the world.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, this whole thing started as like, okay, we want to build this game and we need a way to make it plausible. Okay, now we've made it plausible, and then we looked at it and we're just like, holy shit, like this isn't just you know, it could be for something more than just a game, but it was an accident. And so I think that like all this stuff, like as people dabble, and it's not just gaming, but as people dabble in a piece of technology, you know, who knows what comes out the other end.
Yeah, well said. I mean, we hear that phrase all the time. If you're in the greater crypto space and not just gaming, that idea of like, we just need like that one killer app that takes everything off. And in that, I think a lot of people have been saying like, oh, 2024, that's the year of crypto gaming, or the year of Web3 gaming. The killer app is here. It's going to be games. Do you guys feel like, I know we're talking about being early, do you feel like 2024 is too early when we're talking about like killer app? The games are there to bring people. Do you think, I mean, I would say I've played Shrapnel.
Depends on what you mean bring. Like, where do you want them to show up, right? Like, I think if you're questioning, is there going to be a game that is going to have mass appeal outside of anyone who's looking to potentially benefit from their thing? I don't know. I think that what you, I mean, not to toot our own horn, but I think what you brought on this particular podcast are the three that are your most likely candidates. Like, you know, these are the three that I think have, if I was on the VC side, right, or I was an investor, you know, from a high level, these are the bets I would make. So, you know, not financial advice. But so I think you have people that are looking at the right way. And I think that, you know, you'll notice that, and we've all talked about it. Like, we've gotten on calls and talked about it, but you'll notice that not one of these has put themselves in a position where they are going to be the key game for someone else's platform. And that's because, at least on my part, and I from talking to some of the people that you guys work with, I don't think I'm alone. We haven't seen any platform that was willing to value how much the one runaway one has to be enough to get us to commit to something like that.
Yeah.
It's
that makes
just
sense.
not, yeah. Like, I don't know, maybe you guys have committed to something in a way that is more, but I would say that we're all a little bit on the same page about that.
I mean, certainly in the early Shrapnel days, everyone was
Sure.
jumping at us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it all takes the same shape that I'm sure you're familiar with in terms of how those conversations and negotiations go. And like,
yeah, my favorite is, we can help you with your engineering and your stuff. And I'm like, Paul Benner's not going to let you anywhere near the engineering. like that's sorry. You know, or like, you know, our kind of outreach, or like, you know, assessing it. It's great. I appreciate that. But right now, either you have numbers that you're bringing, or you have money that you're bringing. And if you're not bringing numbers or money, then we're not going to marry you. Okay. We're happy to go out. We're happy to have dinner. We're happy to even be seen, you know, strutting around town. But I'm not going to settle down.
No ring, baby.
No ring. I'm not going to settle down with you if you are keeping all of the numbers and all of the money for yourself.
Yeah.
It just
Confirm
doesn't
Paul
work.
Benner had a bunch of money when he met Katie then.
No, he did not. Paul Benner was poor as shit when he met me. But at that point, I didn't have a bunch of money either. Right. And at this point, I know what our game is worth. And I know that that whatever platform, if it's our own, if we were going to go with somebody else, that if I was going to bet on who would bring the most eyeballs in, I would probably bet on the game and not on the platform until the platform has enough people. Once the platform has enough people, then they have something to bring to the table.
The platform doesn't get the people until there's a game there. Like, no one goes to hang out on a platform. They go to play a game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so until that happens, I think that the games that have the capacity to bring those people are the ones with the upper hand. Once you have the upper hand, if you just give that away because somebody's like, oh, I can help you with this, that's great. But none of the three of us are going to do that.
Yeah.
Because we have actually been through this, and we all agree on the fact that you got to have that first great game. If you don't have that first great game, you're just not going to take off.
I mean, talking about that first great game, like Caesar and I have asked that question pretty much to anyone we've had on the podcast about gaming. At the end of it is like, whether we're directly asking the question, or that's the tone of the conversation, is this game fun enough that people would genuinely just play it if it wasn't related to crypto? And sadly, a lot of the times the answer is no. And I think gamers are waiting for that to be yes, that like, yep, the game loop or the whatever it is like, take crypto out of the picture, take blockchain out of the picture, take earning out of the picture, take tokenomics, all of it out of the picture. Would I sit down on a Friday night and play this game with my wife? That's how we spend our Friday nights. And if the answer is no, it's not going to bring the gamers. It's not going to be your killer app. And I think, yes, that's intentional that we brought you guys together, because I think the answer is a yes. And so that's where the conversation.
At least we're all trying.
Yeah,
right?
That's where it gets interesting.
At least that's what I can say about this group, is that we all have that as a primary goal.
Yeah,
like we actually want. I mean,
I played the Shrapnel playtest the other night, and my son has not stopped asking to like he's picking up the Nerf gun, and we're like looking for treasure boxes
Oh,
to
no.
open around the house, just like those, I don't know, the shrapnel boxes, whatever they were, to find the loot. And he's like role playing around our living room, playing shrapnel in his brain, and it's a blast. And to me, that's a resounding win in my mind. And I'm curious, like on that point, we've been talking a lot about like maybe the back end side, but as far as how you get gamers to play the games, are you guys, as far as like how you're positioning yourselves, is it about getting Web3 users? Are you hoping to tap into people that are not in crypto at all? Like, I don't know, because I wonder how many, crypto is such a small space anyway. Like, I wonder how many people here are actually gamers and how many are just people that want to make some money, so they're like willing to play the game, hoping that it makes the money. How do you, I don't know, like what is the mindset behind where you get people to play the game, if that makes sense?
I think that crypto isn't, as a community, isn't large enough to sustain a successful game in the way that we all want our games to be successful. Like the one thing crypto has in spades that, you know, maybe regular gamers don't is money. You could probably extract a whole ton of money from the crypto community and survive for a very long time. But like if you actually want your game to be successful, you want to see, you know, insert famous streamer whose name I don't know here playing your game. Like
it'll be Sam soon. He'll be the famous streamer.
Yeah, I mean, content creator of the year over here, Mr. Big Time. But in order to get those people to play your game, I mean, I'm not even convinced that Sam's even tried Parallel, but in order to get those people to play your game, you know, you need to appeal to a larger audience because they also want their audience to grow, right? And I think that, like, yeah, to gain mass appeal, you really have to try and hit everyone, and the game can't just be if you want to make a game about making money and get people to earn money while playing it, sure, but then you're just like, we're doing like penny stock simulator all over again, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the goal has to be, let's take this to the outside. Let's bring Web 3 to Web 2, as opposed to, you know, let's just scavenge around Web 3 for whatever bits and pieces we can get.
Yeah,
I think
that's
you gotta know
been
who
our
your
approach.
audience is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think every time I
beginning,
mention Web3 gaming, I would say like my friends who are, I mean, just today, I literally had a conversation where someone was like, how's like the fake money stuff going? And these are like lifelong friends. And so as much as I want people to get it, they don't. You know, like I saw a stat from crypto.com the other day that said something like, I think it was, there's 500, their estimates is like 500 million unique people in crypto. That is like a fraction of humanity, and that's way smaller.
And that's way more than I think there are, if we're being
that's
totally
a total
honest.
estimate. And I think that is a small number. And if that is even a true number, it's still tiny. How many of those unique people are just Caesar with 30 wallet addresses? You know, like who
Caesar,
knows?
do you have 30 wallet addresses?
Caesar is like the wallet king.
No, I have 150.
Not Katie.
He uses an address for everything, and I don't.
No. I am the identified like weak link. So like I have to have multiple layers of security that don't have anything to do with me. It's the ADHD. Like no.
Yeah, makes sense.
No.
But I think like even on that, like the fake money, so many of my friends hate like you mentioned NFT and they'll never touch your game. How do you guys, are you navigating that yet? Is that like a problem that you're pushing off to the future? Is that something that you deal with now? I mean, I think about some of the games I've played. I don't know if your guys' are, but I know some of the games is like, yeah, NFT language is pretty standard there. The talk about a token is pretty standard there. How do you, what is the navigation process just with that in general?
Yeah, we don't talk about any of those things in relation, like internally to Shrapnel and the customer base that we're chasing, right? So there's not a Shrap token, there's Shrap. It's not NFTs. There's, you know, weapons, there's skins that you can make. Like, it's just the stuff that you have. It's again, going back to the TCP/IP thing, I'm not going to like refer to the underlying technical architecture of everything that we're building, just like what it is and what affordances that it gives. We are definitely, you know, we started very Web3 audience for obvious reasons. And when we do kind of our not just cohort analysis, but when we look at like the various cohorts of users of Shrapnel, even though the Web3 kind of degen crowd is very small compared to the mass adoption crowd that we're chasing ultimately, they're still important, right? Like critically important. It's the thing that
Mhm.
initially will differentiate it and kind of lift the whole tide for all the rest of the boats, especially for like an economy that we're designing like ours, where you have UGC elements in it, and therefore have people coming in and speculating that are in this like degen crowd. And granted, we always have these personas that we go through with everything that we design. One of them, I don't know how he got the name Toby, but like Toby, the gamer from Kansas who like knows nothing about crypto. When we're going through like UX flows, like what's Toby's experience? What does he care about and
Mhm.
not care about or not know about? So it's like always catering it to Toby, but with the expectation that a Sam is going to come in here who's like super savvy and like get in there and is going to operate like on with a different game within the game, right? So you can't just like, even though that from a marketing perspective, from a persona perspective, we are going for the mass adoption audience of just gamers in general. You can't just completely eliminate. I see some devs are like, no, we're not doing any crypto, anything, just like ignoring them. Like, then why are you building this on blockchain at all, right?
Why
Like
are you in
that part
Web3?
is
Yeah.
important. Yeah. So, how it migrates and the speed, like the velocity of which people start to adopt the wider kind of blockchain crypto ecosystem, I think has less to do with us as Shrapnel and more to do with like the the macro system, like in
Mhm.
other projects and how all that starts to work. What we'll do is bring as many gamers as possible that are just like there for the fun game into it, and we're very much making that pivot over the course of this year as we go into early access and our STX releases and everything. You said some of the metrics of like how many. I also am like, there's no way there's 500 million crypto people in the world. Like that's not a thing. There's probably 100,000 crypto gamers, maybe a million if you count like multiple accounts on like a very particular lightweight mobile interaction. And when you look at like the Axie like style, maybe, but certainly for us, we're like the worst case where it's PC, reasonably high end, synchronous multiplayer. Like you're looking at a
Yeah.
fairly narrow phase, and we're already we're like, no, we're whether it's streamers, influencers, content creators, what you would consider like typical marketing approach and marketing
Mhm.
channel to start growing that audience that's outside of crypto. So I don't know, that's my take at least.
One of the things that is definitely super apparent among the three games that are up here is I've been involved in all three of their playtests. Koji, I'm offended, first of all, that you think I might not have played very well. That's
Oh,
a brutal comment. But whenever these guys do playtests, they actually don't have to incentivize creators to show up at all. Like they just do because they're genuinely the best experiences, and then they also don't have to incentivize creators to like retweet or make content about it because again, they're the best experiences. They're genuinely having fun, and I think that's a very clear line between them and maybe like two others I'd put in that category, and then there's everybody else that has to like pay a ton of money and wrangle people and like beg them to do X, Y, and Z to promote the game. And it's a very clear line between like the top five and everybody else.
I truly believe that like creators deserve to be paid. Like that is I that's part of, what I was really interested in trying to solve was we know that the right person at the right time talking to the right audience can absolutely blow up a project. And the fact that, historically they've had to make content for like 12 hours a day just to get to a place where they can have a sustainable career as a creator is really unfair because they have an outsized impact when they have an impact. And so what I think that putting things on the blockchain has the capacity to allow us to do is to actually look at where that value is coming from and then be able to accordingly value that specific person, right? And that's one of the things that we're able to do that we weren't able to do before that. It's one of the reasons why we were interested in this in the first place, because we had concepts for a game. We had something we went and pitched to Twitch. We're like, hey, if you guys will make these specific features, we think that you can do better yourself, but we also think you can make a better experience for games. We'll even help you. And they were like, yeah, that's not going to like lift our business model a significant enough way. And so we stepped back from it. And it wasn't until we sat down and had a conversation with Mark Long that we said, here's what the key piece of this game is that we had to kind of deprecate. And he's like, you're sitting on an effing gold mine. And, that allowed us to go, oh, this is the answer to something we were looking for, as opposed to trying to find a way to like fit it into something. And I think we got very lucky that way. I mean, as far as the NFT thing, we're headed towards putting up a Steam page. Am I terrified to put up a Steam page right now? Absolutely, right? Because, the internet brings out the trolls, and there are people who otherwise wouldn't pay a damn bit of attention to our game who are going to get on there and be like, I saw they have something.
As soon as it says NFT on the bottom,
yeah. And so, I know that has to be the case. The way that we are looking at that, though, is we need to make very clear which parts of our ecosystem we're developing that are for which cohort of people. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we need to identify it, and we need to be very clear about it and say, look, we think that these people are interested in playing different games. And so we are creating the opportunity for them to play that game within this ecosystem in a way that we hope is supportive of the other parts of the ecosystem and allows everybody to enjoy what they're doing. And I think we, all three of these games are all trying to solve that in different ways. But the nice thing is I do believe that all three of these games have the right perspective on the fact that these are actually different games. Like, people are playing different games within this world. There are people who are playing that really want to play hey, I think that this specific thing is going to do so well. That's a game that they play. And if you allow that to be a game and you look at it as a game and you're like, this is fun for them. They're not necessarily looking at it as, I know people who have a certain amount of money that they will play a speculation game with, but the rest of their money is in something that they find very stable. It's like going to a casino. They're going to choose how much risk they're going to take on because that's fun for them. That's a game. And if we identify that group and we make something that not only is fun for them, but also has the capacity to benefit the other people, the ones that Koji's talking about that we need to go for, and Don's talking about that we need to go for, the hundreds of millions of people that we want actually playing this game, then it can work. But if we try to either pit those against each other or try to act like they are the same customer, then we're going to fail.
We had a Mitt from Pirate Nation. I don't know if you guys know him, recently on the podcast, and he made a really nice analogy that I think really ties this in well. Out of 100% of people that will be playing your game, 90% are just there for the actual game. They don't care about the crypto aspect. Maybe 9% will actually dabble with the crypto stuff, see with the NFTs, trade and things like that. And then 1% will make content around it. But right now, a lot of games, unfortunately, seem to be targeting that 9% instead of really focusing on that 90% that just care about the game, just want to have something fun to play with on the weekends with their friends. With that idea, also ties in not only the games themselves, really focusing on the 90% of like, hey, let's just make a game and market it as a game that people will actually enjoy. You actually have the content creators that are, have their audiences and have the communities also making sure that they target the like, hey, this is actually just a fun game, instead of just saying like, look, this is a fun game and you can earn this much from playing the game and really extracting from it. So Sam, where do you feel like that relationship can come in, and where do you think creators, like yourself, can really come in and help and assist the games that are trying to build something and not take away from that idea of like, hey, they're just building a fun game, but instead of like, saying like, look, they have NFTs and you can come in and you can invest in things like that. Where do you see that relationship going in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really two different audiences, right? Whenever I was selling sponsorships for shows, and I'm sure you guys have had this experience, I sell it as like a B2B thing, right? You either want to sell NFTs or you want to make sure people know that you're active in the community and that you're really Web3, that you really get it. That's a different thing than bringing you daily active users that are going to use your product on a regular basis because they find it super fun. And I think it's really, really important as a creator to be honest about that and know exactly what kind of value you're driving, so that you're not selling snake oil, just like we don't want games to be selling snake oil to us. I do think there's going to be a wave at some point where the balance of like profitability swings in the other direction, where instead of looking for Web3 creators, the money shifts to spending on Web2 creators that can drive that. So I do think there are some creators that are doing a really good job of building their Web2 community at the same time that they're building the Web3 community. We'll see how that all sort of shakes out. It'll be really interesting. But yeah, I think it's really understanding your product and how you can drive whatever they're, like, to use, marketing speak, their OKR, their KPI, like whatever it is that they're trying to do. And then on the other side, on the founder side, it's really important for them to understand what it is they want to drive and being genuinely honest about it. Because a lot of them get so caught up in the language of like, no, all we care about is the game. And it's like, yeah, but it's just us on the call. Like, tell me what you really care about right now. And so that there can be an honest relationship and you can help them in the best possible way.
I want to ask about esports. Katie, you mentioned like earlier in one of your first answers, something a little bit offhanded about like solving some problems that happen in esports right now. I just saw, if anyone is like actively following esports, I love it. But I just saw like a bunch of the Overwatch team just got let go, I think yesterday. One of the ladies over there that was running things is awesome. And she is now doesn't have a job. And we're seeing that happen not just at Overwatch, but pretty much everywhere. The COD League, Fortnite, as far as numbers goes, they're like top brass, and they are lowering their prize pools by like 90%. Everyone is like, the profitability of esports is plummeting off a cliff just as 2024 is kicking off. And I'm curious,
okay,
like,
was
it ever on the cliff?
Or was it
that's
just
the thing?
Yeah. Was it just
like, where was that money coming from?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of and we talk about this all the time because, from the beginning, part of ours is we want people to enjoy competing and watching. I mean, we're an arena game, right?
Yep.
So that's part of it. But I've been asking that question for a while. What I did not realize until very recently is that with Overwatch, it was only like a handful of years ago that they brought everything in-house. Because before that, they were not doing it in-house. And I think what a lot of these big games started to look at and go, oh no, we're losing all of this revenue because it's all going to these external tournament creators and, people like that. So we're going to bring it in-house and we're going to do it ourselves. Well, when you bring it in-house, it's a high cost basis, whether you're running those tournaments or not, because you're keeping, in games, it's not like film where you have a union and you go get your insurance and you go from project to project. Like, you have full-time employees and they stay that way.
Right.
But then you're also dealing with the lack of kind of coordinated external reach, right? And so I didn't realize that Overwatch was with ESL, left to go internal, and now they're going back to that model. And I think it was a dump of cash from a lot of VCs and private equity and, the same kind of group of people that buy major league sports teams were buying esports teams without a real understanding of what the model was going to be for that to be profitable. And we're seeing a contraction. I don't know that that is going to ruin esports. I think that it's going to decentralize it a little bit. And I think that to a certain extent leaves an opening for people who are willing to share the upside and not have to own everything, but actually like let the community have some ownership there. And that has been our philosophy from the beginning. Treat it more like Magic the Gathering. Find your card shops that are going to, sell those things and make those, create those tournaments and that exciting meta for those people, and be willing to give up some of that kind of high level profit. But a lot of these huge game companies are either publicly owned or owned by Tencent, and they are not really allowed to make those choices. And you're looking at a new industry where we don't have the same kind of, issues that we have to go back and look at. So we can invest in some experimental things like funding grassroots abilities for people to do it and not feeling like we have to own everything from top to bottom. And that's what I hope we're seeing. And that's what Wildcard is proposing to do, is to have a much more decentralized way of doing this and allowing the community to own a lot of these things that were otherwise owned by the larger companies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm so confused why people don't do the compendium model that Dota seems to like. Is there a reason that I'm not understanding why we don't do more community-funded esports stuff? It just seems like the biggest no-brainer to me, and I'm not sure why.
Money.
Licensing, I believe. Look, if you look at the licensing for kind of what those esports, teams or those tournaments, things like that, it's I think that licensing becomes the primary concern. It's just like what Don was talking about with interoperability, like the licensing for it to make sense for somebody to license something, the financials are really very difficult to kind of keep under control, or at least to know what that's going to be. I think we can get there. It's going to take people who are like, I'm willing to do this 3 times without making any kind of profit.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts, which is why I do think that crypto is very helpful in those kind of spaces, because it's a collective way of putting together your resources, not just financial resources, but your time resources. And you have it on blockchain, so you know who's doing what things, who's doing what they committed to do, who's not showing up to do what they committed to do. And it's almost like a ledger of your, I mean, for us with wild events, we truly are saying, here's the ledger of your participation. And, you know, broadening that out to allow people to take on certain roles has always been a part of that, you know, a part of that dream. And it is truly to allow people to basically create a CV of their experience on chain. And then that allows them to not only value themselves, but it takes away a little bit of the bullshit, like, oh, I can do this, I can drive this, I can, you know, it's like, okay, well, show me what you have done. And if I see that you have created this tournament within the parallel ecosystem that was run well and people really enjoyed and they wanted to come back for, then I'm going to be interested in funding something and having you take that on. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what our wild events protocol is really meant to do, is to create those opportunities to identify those people very early on who are going to come in and do this anyway because they want to create this tournament. Right. Like it's not like these are things that so many of them do for free. They want to do it. And all we're doing is saying, we recognize that, and we're going to give you some resources so that you're not having to pay for these things out of your own pocket. And if you drive something that helps us out, we will absolutely top that up with more.
Yeah, that's legit. And I love that idea of, again, like you're coming back to people become the solution in Web3. And oftentimes we just talk about the tech, we just talk about the back end, and it really is so people centric. And I'm an esports nerd. Like that's like Sundays after church, we are watching Twitch or whatever with my kids, and he's asking what tournament's on this week. We watched FNCS, the Fortnite Championship Series, this last weekend, like instead of a movie, you know? And so I would love to see some of the problems that are there actually be solved by this space. And I think the room for that solution is here. I have one question just to let you guys, I know when we introed you, we didn't talk at all about what you guys are building. And I would love just a quick answer from everyone, what you are most stoked about with the stuff that you are creating in 2024. And I would, what is being a real quick, feel free to shill. What is being built? What are you stoked about? Why should people be paying attention to these games and to gamified? So Katie, we'll let you start. What are you most stoked about this for 2024 with Wildcard?
I think I'm primarily most stoked about our fan visibility and interaction feature that we've kind of been able to execute on. It was the first thing. It's the reason why we were looking at this in the first place. And so we finally kind of built out at least just a V1 of it. And I'm excited for more people to see that. I think that I'm also excited to get some entertainers and some creators in there and let them go, hey, I think I could use this feature in order to do XYZ. Like that's the fun part, is when you build one of those tools and then you let the people who are actually the ones who know how to utilize that and who know how to drive that excitement and that attention, you let them play with it. That's when you learn the most, right? Because they're the ones that are actually going to do it. And that's why game development is fun, because you can let people get hands on things. And so I'm excited for that. I'm also excited, our road to early access is starting, and I'm so thrilled to be able to have that game in front of more people and see more people play it. And then we also are launching out our third house really soon. And so I'm excited for people to see that third house and that third champion and all the summons that kind of come with it, and the abilities too, because everybody's seen Locke and Bolgar for a while now, and I'm just excited for everybody to see what comes next.
A legendary year for Wildcard. Awesome. What about Parallel? What are you guys stoked about for 2024?
No, that's a good question. I am personally stoked to continue to exist in a space where I can endlessly pontificate and be lauded as a genius. But outside of that, we're going to have some early access opportunities. We're going into open beta soon. So that is both exciting and very scary for me. As well, we're going to be building out the colony experience that we've been talking so much about and releasing more information about that and some of the other stuff that I hinted at earlier. And having that out in the world also scary and exciting. And just continuing to build and iterate in the space and try and bring more people in. I'm excited at the prospect of people dipping their toes in the waters of Web3 with our games, and then hopefully it becoming a less scary space in general for people to exist and operate in. God willing, I'm excited for number to go up. Please, the devs do something. Honestly, I'm just excited to get more opportunities to play the games of the people that are in this chat with me, because I have played Shrapnel only a handful of times, and I wasn't able to participate. I do have like all of the goodies, operators and all that, but I wasn't in front of my PC the last playtest, so I definitely want to try that. And I want to try this new house that Katie's talked about, because I know that Wildcard is going to be amazing, because I am terrible at the game and it makes me angry. If it sucked, I could be bad at it and just be like, oh, that's fine, whatever, this game sucks. But like, I'm like, God damn, I wish I was like could play this game. But I've come to terms with the fact that maybe I'm too old to be good at
I
that
admire
sort of
the
stuff.
way you guys as studios and games support each other. It's rad. I think that is something that is really cool about this space, that you can get such an illustrious group of individuals building awesome things, and it doesn't feel like you guys are at each other's throats and trying to just win all of the market share. Like, it really is, hey, we're all building awesome things. Let's make this space rise together. Sam, what are you most excited about for Gamified or everything else you're building in 2024?
Yeah, dude. Today is literally the anniversary of Gamified. 52 consecutive wins, guys. We've brought together, thanks, man, some of the best minds in the space. All three of these projects have been on many times. So super grateful for that. I'm very excited to run it back for another 52 episodes this year. I'm also just really excited to be able to actually play these games and to be able to partner with some of the best ones. Like Koji mentioned earlier, I won Content Creator of the Year, and that's cool. But what it really is great about it is that means that like I get to kind of pick the games that I genuinely believe in and work with them, because most of them are interested in me. And so I'm really excited to be able to kind of put my money where my mouth is and like spend time creating great content, trying to elevate that for the people that I genuinely believe in and want to place my bets on. And that's like the best position I can possibly imagine. So I'm super excited to just see like Wildcard hopefully is going to have like an open beta that I can play 24 hours a day, get stomped on, and actually like learn about the game. Parallel has their open beta coming up. I can play all the time and actually invite my friends in. Yeah, I'll play for the first time. Can't wait. Couldn't get a code last time. Shrapnel I played for the first time on Thursday, which is amazing. And I can't wait to be able to, again, just like invite my Web2 friends in and be like, you don't need an NFT, guys. Just like come try it and tell me if it sucks, whatever. But I think more often than not, they'll be really surprised and stoked about the progress that's been made.
Man, I'm hyped for you. It's going to be a good year for Sam. And Shrapnel, what are you guys stoked about? I know I played your last play test this last week. Fantastic. Had a blast. Don, what does 2024 hold for Shrapnel?
It's probably a bullish signal that I have trouble picking, because there's just so much stuff happening in 2024. Obviously, we use the kind of negative sentiment internally of getting punched in the face for the first time by the community, and anybody who's released a game knows exactly what I'm talking about, which is like we're in that phase now. And granted, like the Web3 audience is considerably more amicable than the kind of wider gaming audience around the world. So I don't think it's going to be too bad, but I'm actually looking forward to it. We've had those kind of internal operator play tests. There's another one on Friday, and then kind of we're taking the dark and darker approach of like focal days that we then have a cadence to, and give people missions and a leaderboard to get people in. So having that first like wider. Everyone with extraction packs hops in. We get the subjective feedback and see all the metrics running on the live dashboards and everything, and see how it's actually working. And we have been very pleased thus far, because again, like synchronous match made around the world game, hard to do, but we have like such a stellar team here that it's all been going. We're like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, this is all just going way too smoothly. But aside from that, we're going to have all of our incremental STX, like early access releases, where all of the progression systems and kind of people's ability to make their own stuff in the creator tools, so adding insignias and skins and having those reflected, and of course the like light up of our marketplace, which is actually ready to go already. We're kind of like waiting for the right time with the game so that you have the stuff, you're like have something to do with this stuff in the game at the same time you can then trade it. Like, we don't want to kind of put cart before the horse on that, but like all of those pieces are kind of teeing up to get lit up over really the next kind of 6 to 8 months, at which point we'll be like turning the knob to always on, when you can come in and play 24/7. And again, synchronous game, so we need kind of a healthy audience, healthy concurrency, so people can get into matches and feel good about it. And then aside from that, I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is we have a platform that we'll be launching, kind of like our own Xbox Live / playfab that we've made for Shrapnel and really other industries. So kind of lighting that up, and the formal partnerships that we're making, both on the client side as well as like the internal platform partnerships that we're building, and kind of the approach that we've taken, that's very I'm proud to say kind of like very Web3 ethos, like kept that at heart in terms of meet you where you are, like allow it to be as decentralized as possible, like fill in with whatever partners you might have, right? We don't want to create a walled garden, but we do want to, in the spirit of like getting the mass adoption, from kind of gamers into this space. It's not just for Shrapnel, like obviously we're laser focused on that, but we also want other games that are traditionally Web 2 to at least be able to like get in and play with stuff, and realize what it can and can't do, and come up with new ideas, probably based on the patterns we have, a bunch of new ideas that they never really considered because it's just a very different space, and be able to like experiment and come up with stuff that we didn't anticipate. So I think over the 2024, it's a lot. Like, there's a lot going on here.
It's a big year.
Yeah, and it's like all of those things are just a daily tickle to me.
A daily tickle. I think we need more tickles. And I'm glad that Web3 gaming is genuinely like, it's here. It feels like it's kicking off. I think the legend that we all know is not wrong when he says Web3 gaming is inevitable. I'm excited to see that become a reality, Sam. And see, I'm excited to play your guys' games more. That's something that I couldn't say a year ago about gaming in this space. And that's a huge, huge, huge win. So thank you for letting us pick your brains. If you are listening, wherever you're listening from, in the description somewhere, you can find all of them. Jump in there, play their games, follow along. We appreciate it. Much love, you guys. Thank you so much for listening.